I was one of the reasons that we had this today, because I believe that transparency and accountability is something that we should really strive for. And the Auditor General was good enough through leadership to perform this audit that we would find out and hopefully be thorough with the funds of our wildlife management statewide.
I'm here to announce that my team will immediately start an audit of the Pennsylvania Game Commission. The Game Commission plays an important role in the lives of millions of Pennsylvanians and has a major impact on the Pennsylvania economy. 2 million Pennsylvanians identify themselves as hunters and trappers. Each year, the Game Commission sells almost 1 million hunting licenses, putting the Keystone State in the top 3 states in the nation for numbers of licensed hunters. The economic impact of hunting in Pennsylvania is almost $2 billion. In addition to licensing hunters and trappers, the Game Commission owns almost 1.5 million acres of state game lands in 65 counties, manages wild birds and mammals, develops wildlife habitats, and works with private landowners to provide free access to their hunting and trapping. I look forward to a constructive and positive audit to provide an independent assessment of the Commission's revenues and expenditures. My team will evaluate the Commission to ensure its resources are being used to benefit the millions of Pennsylvanians who enjoy hunting, trapping, and other outdoor recreational activities. My team will conduct a thorough audit that I anticipate will be completed later this year. I want to give huge commendation to Representative Maloney. We may be of different parties, but he and I are friends, but he has been on me tirelessly to do this audit for at least 1.5 years, right? Mm-hmm. And at some point you're like, well, Dave, I don't want to get in trouble with Dave, so we got to do the audit. But in all seriousness, this is something that I think is a long time coming, and Representative Maloney deserves a lot of credit for getting us to this point. But I also want to make it clear that leadership of both sides of the aisle in the House, on the Democratic side particularly Representative Hanna, and on the Republican side particularly Representative Reed, but I don't want to say they're the only ones, we're also writing letters in support of this audit happening.
Transparency and accountability. I've always felt that if we had both of those things, we can always justify and we can always plan and adjust moving forward. I've been very concerned about our state bird. Grouse in Pennsylvania are in a pretty dangerous place. That's concerning. It's been concerning for a long time. The #1 reason for hunting license sales in Pennsylvania and nationwide is to pursue white-tailed deer. We know that we have about 200,000 declined numbers in hunters, and that's for a reason of what they have concern with, and that is the mismanagement of that wildlife. People bring up politics. Politics, to me, is in everything we do. And one of the biologists from the Game Commission stated years ago that deer management was not done under science, but politics. I think that is a misguided endeavor, and I think that type of admittance is one of the reasons why we're here today. We have seen checks written for $250,000 at a time given to nonprofits. We've had a major ethics violation take place. These are all things that we didn't do, the sportsmen of Pennsylvania did not do. But this is one of the reasons that we need accountability and transparency as to where the funds are going, as the Auditor General already mentioned, with gas leases, timber sales, and so on. And the economic impact to the state of Pennsylvania is huge. We have legislative budget and finance reports that show hundreds of millions of dollars of lost revenue.
The rural communities, for instance, Cameron County called this economic suicide for the county, what the Game Commission is doing, mismanagement of the forest. What the Game Commission should be doing is massive habitat management. They've adjusted wildlife populations, especially the deer population, to accommodate the habitat that exists. That should not be their job. Their job should be to adjust the habitat to accommodate wildlife. I've determined that there are probably around 151 species of wildlife in Pennsylvania that are currently in decline or on the verge at risk of declining in Pennsylvania because of the lack of habitat. The Game Commission still refuses to do anything about it. There are other problems that have to do with CWD, which is chronic wasting disease. There are indications that the Game Commission is actually encouraging this, and if that happens, we're not looking at $1 billion of problems a year. It's many times that, and the loss of the elk herd and the visitors in north central Pennsylvania. The Game Commission is claiming a deficit of $8 million a year. They're laying off people, and in fact, they're causing $1 billion of impact. And the loss to the Game Commission funding itself is estimated to be over $8 million a year. So their budget deficit was caused by their own mismanagement of wildlife.
I have been contacted, as I said earlier, not only by and through sportsmen across the state, but I have been contacted by people not only in the management of the Game Commission and Fish Commission, but the Game Commission today, but by people on the ground, boots on the ground, who don't want to identify themselves, and some people from the upper office who have approached me personally and said, please keep up the fight, because we do not agree with the direction of our administration.
If we find something wrong, I don't think there's anybody more bulldogged than me about trying to drive the change. You win some, you lose some, I get that. And I mean, I'm not a dictator. But on the same token, if there's something wrong there, nobody's going to be a stronger advocate for the hunters and the sportsmen of this state than me.